CitizenCon's coming up at the end of this month, about 20 days from now. And we've got a lot of different kind of messaging on what might happen. We've got CitizenCon from previous years that are talking about features that are coming, doing keynotes, all that kind of stuff. We've got a lot of different sort of ways that we could go about predictions. So we're going to start with just looking at what they've said about this. We're going to look at previous shows and what they've brought to CitizenCon. And then we're going to look at like personal expectations based on the features that have been being worked on over the past year or two and other things like that. So buckle in. Let's go. The first things they have said about the event are that the schedule is coming soon. Yay. So we still don't have a schedule. Frustrating, but they are putting the finishing touches on it. And I'm guessing we're going to get it later this week. If not like tomorrow during the roadmap roundup, maybe they'll do it. I think we're like, 2 weeks? Yeah, we're 3 weeks out. 2 weeks out actually from this event going on. So I think schedule is probably due by now. It's a 2-day event taking place on October 21st and 22nd. The event map is still coming soon as well, and they've got a visitor's guide to LA, but we're not going to look at that. General FAQ. Why is the event 2 days? They just basically say we've got a lot of stuff going on. It's only on one stage, so you won't have to be looking at 2 different feeds of video, luckily. Just one video the whole way through, kind of like back in 2017, 2016 time. There's going to be presentations. There's going to be probably interviews. They'll be doing content in between the different panels and likely showing some of the other, like the backers and people who are there, but it'll be mostly focused on these presentations and panels. Another quick tidbit of information that I thought would be kind of cool to know. Last time we had an in-person CitizenCon, it was 1,200 people who were there. This time it is currently at, I think I saw 2,500. So it's a lot of people, and it's more than double the size in 2019. All right, so that was just a little bit of info there. Let's actually jump into realistic expectations in terms of content. So the first thing to look at would be CitizenCon 2952. That would be last year's show. And what I'm looking at here is the way that they organized it. Now, I think this was their best CitizenCon so far. One of the things that made it the best was the way that they formatted it. Instead of doing a long sort of continuous segment of talking, and this is mainly because it wasn't in person, they did these sort of, honestly, they weren't even longer Inside Star Citizens. They're just kind of higher polished Star Citizen or Inside Star Citizen episodes that go over one single topic from multiple perspectives. The thing is, all of these topics are stuff that was in progress. So we were seeing not only side of the design side of it and that kind of stuff, we got to see some in-game demonstration of it. So I appreciated that sort of format for a feature. One of the panels that didn't really do that last year, though, was a design brief for investigation missions. Now, this one I think was cool because it gave us an overview of a big initiative they had for the next year, but it didn't happen in the next year. And I think that's something that kind of messed them up overall with the last couple CitizenCons, is some of this stuff seems very much geared towards a 4.0 launch. And I don't think something like a mission like this would be tied to 4.0. Investigation missions are already in Star Citizen. So I'm hesitant to say that they get off the hook with this one, since 4.0 has been delayed, so the investigation missions must be delayed. I don't appreciate that we got a design brief on a specific type of mission a year ago and haven't heard anything about that type of mission since then. And I guess that kind of speaks towards like what we expect CitizenCon itself to be. I think CitizenCon should be an update, an annual update that people can watch if they don't watch all of the shows in between, but also sort of like either a major update for things that we're going to continue to see, or I mean, that's basically it. Just a major update. I don't want to hear about something at CitizenCon and then not hear about it again. Know what I mean? Yeah. Not with the secretiveness. So engineering, we did get more videos on engineering. We heard more about that. Master modes, we've heard more about that. The new underground facilities, we've heard more about that. But the design brief, I don't really appreciate, especially just because it didn't happen. This, however, was the best CitizenCon they've done in terms of things that have been happening. I hope that they continue to follow the format that they did with CitizenCon 2022, because this is all stuff that we can actively see in development. I mean, the Corsair obviously is a ship that we've already gotten, but like the Lorville Redux entered into the game. The underground facilities we can see are actually pretty close to getting into the game. Planetary Pyro, we won't talk about that. Master modes, it's being tested now. Engineering is not in the game, but we've seen more videos on it, so it does feel like it's still going on. If we go back to other CitizenCons, let's go back to, let's say 2021. Actually, let's say 2018 CitizenCon. Let's see what's on there. So, like, with this one, we got VFX. We got a VFX panel, which is cool. It looks great. But it's not like a key part of the game, you know? I would prefer to see this included with like a rendering panel, maybe. They also gave us something about like characters. We haven't seen a ton of stuff to get updated with characters. Female models, different types of hair, the cloth system that's supposed to allow us to wear backpacks, the actor feature status stuff. Like, there's a lot of character stuff that's missing. The cloth system from the physics, we saw that, but it took a little while to come in. And you can go back to even further things. I mean, you guys know the infamous sandworm. Earlier CitizenCons had a lot more stuff that took longer to make it into our hands. And I think 2022 was a good format for them to go with if they wanted to do that again this year. The last in-game show or in-person show we had was 2019. And that show gave us stuff like the cosplay contest. So this would be another kind of, this is a thing that's going to happen at CitizenCon. There are going to be people who come dressed up and wearing outfits. There's going to be a whole judging thing. If you're interested in this kind of thing, there's usually some pretty entertaining stuff going on. One of the guys had like the bag on his head this year to be like a Lorville person, which was pretty funny. But overall, this is sort of more community-focused stuff. It's definitely not something we've done the last 2 years when the event wasn't in person. But now that it is in person, you are going to see some more stuff like this. If you don't like this stuff, it's a great chance to go get snacks and stuff. But if you do, it's good entertainment. Otherwise, besides that, the kind of stuff that you'd see in a full-scale CitizenCon like this that's in person is going to be more of Jared. You know, more commentary. We did get some of that in between the shows last time. But with this one, it'll be more like the interviews. They'll have people on microphone walking around. You'll get a little bit more of the... It feels less professional than last year's did. So as far as the feel of the show and the goal of the show, that's kind of the stuff that I think you guys should expect. Multiple panels, big topics, and if it's looking more like last year, stuff that we can expect more soon rather than later. And as we're going to go into here with what they've talked about we should expect, you're going to recognize that anyways. Our next dive into what to expect with Star Citizen is more along the more exciting stuff, which is content. We've been talking about kind of the feel and format so far. Now let's talk about the features that you might actually be seeing. And the first thing I want to look at for this is kind of the first messaging we got on this. Going back to the letter from the chairman back in December of last year. I've covered this a lot actually because I find this to be both the most annoying and exciting thing about Star Citizen this year. And that is all of the smaller kind of features and initiatives besides server meshing that we could see. Now, we got a lot of great messaging on that in December of last year before we learned about the disaster of the PES rollout. So things got delayed a bit. But I had a problem this year, and I've made it very clear on this channel itself. I've had a problem with the messaging on how progress is going on these things, even though they're obviously set back. And we started to get some more communication on that this last week with Chris Roberts talking. We'll look at that in a little bit, but I think it's still not quite as much. That being said, these are all the things that they expected us to see this year. So, since we haven't even seen them in game, it's almost a guarantee that we will see them previewed in some way in CitizenCon. I'm not saying they will be ready to go into the game, but the fact that they expected them this year, unless there was a huge realization that they wouldn't need any of these features for years to come, which they all seem like we really do need them, then I think all of these would be in positions that are far along enough for us to see at CitizenCon. So, not confirmed, but likely. Now, there are a host of other exciting features and content we have planned for 2023 besides server meshing. Pyro, with its assorted planets, moons, settlements, space stations, and assorted factions and AI population being the headline. I know what you're thinking. Oh, another year of Pyro. For starters, last year's CitizenCon wasn't focused on Pyro. There was only 2 panels on Pyro. That was the planetary panel that went over the different planets and the 3-minute trailer for Outlaw Lifestyle. Besides that, engineering, Lorville, which is in Stanton, master modes, new ships, underground facilities, which will be in Pyro, but I think there'll be other places, design brief for investigation, which isn't Pyro, and community hub, whatever. So 2 out of 9 panels were Pyro last year. The focus for these most recent CitizenCon episodes and conventions aren't Pyro. I mean, even in 2019, it was UI, it was armor, it was the sound systems, it was microtech. I don't even know. In 2020, we didn't have one. Honestly, we could look at what was 2021, but we won't go through that. The focus is on Pyro. It's 4.0. Pyro will probably be the headline because it's interesting, it's exciting, it gives them a lot to show off, especially the settlements and new factions. But it's not going to be all that we're talking about. Moving on from Pyro, we also will be rolling out the new resource management system, which replaces the old pipe system with a much more dynamic and scalable system to allow for truly emergent behavior. Why would we not get that, right? We saw this last year, like I showed you guys, in the gameplay itself already being displayed. What I'm guessing we'll see this year of engineering is either a full demo like this with none of the debug software, but the actual gameplay, or maybe we'll see it used in a keynote demo if they decide to do it. They'll slip it in there like it's, oh, it's part of the gameplay. He just naturally fixed the ship. Whoa, it's engineering showcase. But I do think we'll see it one way or another. Past engineering, we've got bounty hunting. This one is actually in the maybe section, I think. Yeah, I've got this on the maybe section in my own list. Because as much as I want to believe we'll see bounty hunting this year, I still just, God, we've seen so little signs that we will. The only things that we've seen so far that have to do with bounty hunting, and I do have footage for this. Let's pull this up. We've seen this, which is like literally a couple seconds of somebody pushing a little human carrying pod. And we've seen this, which is the law offices in Lorville. Now, this is a huge tell because we're seeing not only actual physical work being done, but with all of the things located, the reception, detention wing, you can see the little pod locations over here. And then I got some more footage, I think, here. You can see that they've got dimensions played out. They've got the process ready to go. They've got the idea and design behind putting the humans into these pods, and all this stuff clearly shows that not only are the art things figured out and the engineering things figured out, but they've got design figured out. So this does point towards the gameplay surrounding bounty hunting going pretty far. And in the monthly reports, we've also seen things like non-lethal weaponry being worked on, different types of damage and status effects, the ability to restrain people by tying up their hands and arms. We've seen NPCs being able to be restrained and have logic behind their restrained state. And we've heard about the gameplay behind these detention centers. So there's been a lot of talk pointing towards bounty hunting. I'm still not so sure about it though, because it does depend on virtual AI, which is part of the quantum economy, and simulation, and that's an elephant. That's a big elephant. So we might see a big update to bounty hunting showed. That might just be the keynote, to be honest. I think a multiplayer bounty hunting operation that takes place between Stanton and Pyro would probably be the best keynote they can show in CitizenCon. But we don't know how it's gonna roll out, how they're gonna show this stuff. But bounty hunting is another option. Next after that would be persistent hangars with freight elevators, allowing you to call up your stored inventory or place things into storage. Now this is something that actually sounds really close, like next patch close, not 321, but maybe 322. So I do think we'll see it as well. But I'm not sure if they're going to dedicate like a panel to it, because it is such a in-our-face feature that we're already getting inside Star Citizens. We're already getting Spectrum posts about it. We're already practically doing this kind of stuff ourselves. It's less flashy, and it could probably be included in a panel that like an overview of cargo. Actually, that could work for them, because they've gotten so far ahead on, or not ahead, I'm sorry, because they've gotten so much progress done in the industrial form of gameplay. What they could do is just make a panel about each different type of gameplay, the current situation with it, and where it's going to go in the next year. That would be a great way to update everybody, from detailed players to players who only get an annual update, what's happening with refining, what's happening with cargo hauling, what's happening with salvage, and what's happening with mining. All those things are moving, except for kind of mining. And all of them are looking at major updates in the next year, so along with persistent hangars and freight elevators, maybe we'll hear about that stuff, but I don't think just freight elevators are going to get in their own panel. Towards the end of the year, we should see some of the more Squadron 42 related work arrive in Star Citizen. Now this sentence is actually kind of a big deal, and it wasn't a big deal until a few days ago, because this sentence, we should see some of the more Squadron 42 related work arrive in Star Citizen towards the end of the year, lines up really closely with this sentence. There is a lot of great tech and features that we are bringing into Star Citizen from Squadron 42 that will dramatically change the feel and polish of Star Citizen. So, disclaimer, those two sentences came from the same person. So it's not like some big thing, but it does show that the plan is still the same. Squadron 42 features need to be what shows off the progress going into Star Citizen, and they will be focusing on that in CitizenCon. But there's not really much to know about sort of how close those features might be. Last year we saw Squadron 42 features at CitizenCon, and I really thought that meant that they would be delivered within the year. And I think if they didn't have PES problems, maybe they would have. But at least what we did end up happening, not a single one of them was delivered, except for the mantling changes that we're just getting in 320. Let me think. No EVA, no scanning, no combat AI. I guess the combat AI is a little bit better, but I mean, why don't we just read those features? I'm sorry. So those features include more flexible player traversal, which we did just get in 320 in some ways, especially on ladders and ledges, a greatly improved interaction system we have not gotten, FPS scanning we have not gotten, the new star map we have not gotten, MFDs using the more performant and flexible building blocks UI system and much deeper combat UI. Both of those things we have not gotten. We got persistent MFDs, but I don't think those are what they mean here. I think this is what they're talking about. This would be their new MFD graphics. Oh God, I don't have it. I'm in the wrong spot here. Hold on. So these are the MFDs I think they're talking about. Obviously much more detailed, better to look at, more information. It's displayed better. On top of that, they would be persistent, and you would also be able to move the displays on the MFDs into your HUDs. So, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, I only have 1 or 2 MFDs in my ship. I need more space. Part of the MFD system is supposed to come with the new HUD system, and it allows you to place that information up in the air so you can kind of see it while you're looking around. That's, I think, what they're talking about here. So we haven't gotten any of those things, but I think they're all things we'll see at CitizenCon. The new star map being the one thing that I'm not super sure about, but I think they're at the point where they can't not show us that anymore. Like, come on. They've been polishing the star map since last year. This thing's done. It's finished. They could show it to us if we wanted. I think the star map is probably the one thing out of all Star Citizen's development that I can say that about. Not a single other object would I say confidently that they could show it to us if they wanted to, but the star map definitely. So while I think it could show up at CitizenCon, I also think they're sitting on it for hype, and it depends on when 4.0 happens. We'll see. Another thing on here that we didn't touch on before was the Gen 12 renderer stuff they talked about. Now that the Gen 12 renderer is functioning in 3.18, the graphics team will work on multi-threading improvements and optimizations for the renderer, as well as hook up the Vulcan Graphics API to it to unlock some of the performance gains that the Gen 12 renderer can provide. Vulcan API is another one of those like 5 to 6 year goals that we only started to hear about. I honestly might be able to find... Stand by. I bet you we can find when they first started talking about this stuff. Because I think, going back to the comments that we were looking at towards the beginning of this stream, it's easy to view Star Citizen as an in-the-moment sort of crazy, mismanaged, no sort of plan kind of thing. But if you go back to these things that were happening in 2017 and 2018, I will admit, I think those are the times when they started to wrap their head around it more. But if you go back to these times, you'll find a lot of the same exact messaging that we're getting now, but with the added caveat of coming soon, or we want to, or we're planning to, or this is how we will. Is this the right team? Yes, this is. So, somewhere here on one of these panels, they kind of talk about some of the goals that we're seeing now. I just got to find it. But things like server meshing and Gen 12 and the damage systems and like even engineering based on the pipe system or some of the cargo changes that they've done based on item 2.0, all things that they started talking about like 7 years ago that are finally starting to show results. And it shows that like maybe they're slow at it, but they are being pretty consistent. This actually might not be the right video. I think I want the year earlier, 2017. Here we go. This is the talk. So this is the big talk about their rendering and graphics and tech development for Star Engine, which is indeed a renamed version of CryEngine. It is, okay, I guess Lumberyard is what they have to say at that point because the license changing. It is it's the overdone version of that though. It's very much changed from the inside out at this point, so they're calling it its own product. But back when they were talking about their goals and expectations going into it, they showed us a couple interesting words. So the P4K system is something that we hear about a lot. Render to texture. This is not the slide I'm looking for. Next items on the graphics roadmap: space fog, occlusion and shadowing, new shield effects, depth of field, motion blur. Still not what I'm looking for. Background workers. Man, am I not going to be able to find it here? I don't want to. I've already spent enough time looking for this. They talked about some of the goals that they're starting to hit with Gen 12. And my whole point... God, I'm so off base. My whole point is that Gen 12 is a really long initiative that they've been doing. I'm sorry, I got way too off topic with that. They've been pushing it very hard, and it's been a long time in the planning. At this point, I think that we might see Vulcan API something, presentation, some way of showing us what performance improvements it might make, maybe the things that it will allow, like ray tracing and global illumination, and DLSS, stuff like that. I think we might see some demos of that at CitizenCon as well. Not a guarantee, but we've been seeing a lot of talk of Gen 12 and the work going into it. They're filling out taking out the legacy code all throughout this year. They've been doing a lot of work to prepare for the API. And we've seen that they have a working prototype of ray tracing working in Star Citizen. So graphics improvements probably also going to be presented at CitizenCon. And they always do a very good job at it. It's one of those things that's, again, something people say. This game's going to be graphically outdated by the time people are playing it. And we can see that because they built this engine themselves, they're getting a lot better at continuing to improve it despite that. So that's letter from the chairman, beginning of the year, kind of the stuff that was being said that might be coming to CitizenCon. Now let's look at something a little more recent from Chris Roberts, just last week, stuff he was saying. He kind of talks about just features coming from Squadron over to Star Citizen. The plan has always been to bring this work into Star Citizen. Squadron 42 is just a good way for us to focus and really polish the feel and usability without the pressure of maintaining functionality as we iterated on for the always live environment of the PU. And yeah, here we go. I'm very excited for CitizenCon as we will be sharing a lot of these features and more. So there it is, expectations again being set by Chris Roberts himself. Now, setting your expectations based on Chris Roberts, it's like expecting to find a bottle of water in the desert based on somebody's guarantee. You're going to want to be careful about that. But as far as I'm concerned, that does mean that we will be seeing at least some of these things we've been talking about. It will be great to be in front of a live crowd and spending time with the community in person. It has been 4 years since the last in-person CitizenCon. So they're hyping this up, man. They're going hard on the marketing for this CitizenCon, and it seems to be paying off. We'll see if we'll see if it comes through. But remember this. Remember what they're saying about Squadron 42 building on that feel of polish and niceness of these features when they're showing these features at CitizenCon. What we are expecting to see is possibly something that needs to be bug fixed because Squadron 42 isn't coming out in 2 months, but something that is fit for a finished game, not something that is alpha ready. Now, the application of it might end up being in Star Citizen alpha ready. For instance, if engineering is working in Squadron, it might only be working for the ships that we need, whereas in Star Citizen, it's only working for a couple of the ships that we have. But like outside of the actual quality of the gameplay itself, I'm expecting some AAA quality game mechanics. So we'll see what they give us and what they show us. One other thing that I also saw here in a Spectrum post, it was a talk about the progress on female character models when it comes to clothes, when it comes to, I guess this one's mainly clothes. I'd also like to throw in hair though. Our hair choices are miserable. And there is a good reply from one of the community managers, Niku actually, he's just newly added, congratulations buddy. And he said, there's been a big push for having clothing design for both male and female characters with its own counterpart. Talks a little bit more about the work they've been doing over this last year to develop more assets specifically designed for female characters. And then at the end of the post says, keep an eye on the upcoming CitizenCon 2953. 3 weeks now. So, not necessarily a confirmation, not a straightforward notification, but a little hint that we might actually see some progress on the female characters at CitizenCon. I know that's not a big deal for a lot of people, but this is important. They need to be supporting both sides of the gender question when it comes to people who are playing the game. And there are a lot of women who are playing Star Citizen and would like to obviously look like themselves. There are also plenty of dudes who would like to look like women in game, and obviously that's a choice that people should have. My own wife, I need to be able to give her nice pink clothes and long hair, or else she's not going to play the game. So like, let's make it happen. And nails. She said nails too. So yeah, I think this might be something that we see. Maybe they'll, in like the keynote, maybe they'll be playing as like a female character and just kind of highlight the fact that they did that. I think they actually did that 2 years ago. Yeah, at 2021, I want to say, they actually highlighted the hair that was used by the person who was playing the game, and I don't think we have that here still. We went over their Spectrum posts, the letter from the chairman. Now let's talk about my own personal expectations. Okay, so, oh man, the first thing I have on my yes, most likely, or yes, definitely expectations for CitizenCon is a mission giver update. And I'm trying to think of why I put that on here. So some of this is stuff that I've been doing over the last couple months. Some of this is stuff that I have done just today and yesterday. And I really should have written down some kind of notes or something that explained why I expected to see a mission giver update. Oh, I know what it is. That's July. If I'm right about this and it is July, somebody better send me a cookie. This is, because I don't actually think it's going to be July. Because of the highlight of the Idris loop. I don't know what that is. Here it is. The narrative team is expanding to include 2 dedicated narrative designers who will bridge the gaps between narrative design and AI. They will look at all NPCs from mission givers to population characters and refine their behaviors to make them feel more alive and ultimately establish the tone and flavor of the game's various locations. This is not the only mention of mission givers in monthly reports this year, but narrative being involved, they've been getting more involved with the mission team lately, and it's led to more kind of narrative driven stuff. I think they might have also had an update in the June monthly report. Let's see. Get this man a cookie. Let us see. No, not in June. I thought maybe there was one other update, but I might be wrong about that. But yeah, I think it was just a general expectation that like we're getting closer to an environment that mission givers will actually work. Separating the replication layer is probably going to make AI run better. We've been seeing a lot of AI updates, narratives getting involved in mission givers. The missions features team has improved some of the mission giver missions over the last couple months. So things are headed in the direction where I think a focus on more narrative and mission giver based missions are going to be a thing, especially in Pyro. So an update on mission givers and more advanced missions for us to play. Yeah, I'd say yes for sure. Hey, you know what? I'm going to put the Aaron Halo belt on our maybes down here. Holy crap. What if they just show us, oh my god, what if the Aaron Halo belt just shows up in a keynote demo? Like what if in the keynote demo they have to go from Hurston to the Pyro jump point, which requires them to pass through the Aaron Halo belt. So you get to see both the new jump point, the Aaron Halo belt, and probably new quantum travel. That's something else we'll get to here. So many opportunities. There's so much freaking stuff that still needs to go into this game. That's been worked on at some point in the last few years. Okay, after this, so we've only gotten through the very first list item. Good stuff. We're making good progress. Star map. Yeah, nobody's going to tell me. I mean, I guess I said earlier that they might still not show the star map, so I don't know if I should have it in the yes section. I guess I could keep this in the maybe section, but star map seems really likely. We'll get back to that. Female character updates. We just went over why that's probably yes. Santok Yai is literally... How could they not show the Santok Yai after we've already seen so much of it? It would actually be a very bad idea, I think, for them to not show it. It's a super easy sell. It's an asset that's basically already done, and we know it's going to be in the game probably in the next 4 months. It might even make it into the 3.21 branch. I don't know, but that ship's going to happen for sure. I don't see how they wouldn't show this. Same with the Spirit series. This was on the thumbnail for the video, and it is already confirmed for 3.20.1. So it's very much possible that this ship will literally be in the game before CitizenCon even happens. Depends on when 3.21 comes out. Depends on where they want to put the A1 in, whether it's going to be 3.21.1. I think it'll be 3.20.1 since the A1 was already planned for that. I'm sorry, 3.21. God, the naming. I think it will come for CitizenCon. I'll say that. So it's a nice ship. This is a good one. I think it's a really good size. It's that perfect size that acts as a daily driver for a lot of people. Probably comes from Crusader, so it's got great styling. It's a little bit defenseless in that it doesn't have an extra turret on it. But actually, is that a turret? I don't think it has an extra turret there. But that does possibly look like a turret in the back. So I can't tell. Is that a backwards facing turret? Either way, if it's only backwards facing, it's not great. If it's not only backwards facing, that's good. If it's not a turret, then yes, this ship is kind of defenseless, but it looks good. It fits in right around the same size as a Cutlass or Freelancer, so it kind of does look bigger than it is. You get a sense of the scale here. And there are 3 different trims, the C1, the A1, and the E1. We're probably going to see the A1 first, which is a bomber. Looks like this on the inside. And then we will be getting the C1 rear turret. Okay. A1 and the E1 have a turret, C1 doesn't. Okay, gotcha. So the C1 has a cargo space inside. So good to know. The C1 does not have a turret, but the A1 and E1 do. Don't know if they are rear-facing turrets or not, but that does leave the C1 being a bit more undefensive. Does anyone know? Oh, it has a tractor beam instead. Okay, gotcha. So the C1 has a utility mount, the other 2 have a defensive turret. I see. No, you can't replace utility mounts with turret mounts. So the C1 is just naturally more defenseless. We'll have to see if they buff that a little bit, maybe in shields or speed or something. But the A1 is coming first. C1 is coming second. E1 is still unaccounted for, and it will be a passenger transport variant, so we're still waiting on that. But these are definitely yeses at CitizenCon because they're likely going to release at CitizenCon. These will be the STV of last year. I'm pretty sure the STV came out at CitizenCon or like right after it. These are much more exciting than that. So server meshing is a definite yes. I believe even in this post itself, Chris Roberts tells us that they're going to talk more about, let's see, graph database, the back end, enterprise, blah, blah, blah. Unreliable, we talked to engineers. Somewhere in the messaging, I believe somebody did say that they were going to talk more about their plans with server meshing at CitizenCon. It would be insane for them not to. Like that would be absolutely utter garbage if they didn't talk about server meshing at this year's CitizenCon. So that's a definite yes. I feel like we don't need to explain that. UGFs? I mean, come on. Another easy one that's low-hanging fruit. UGFs were at CitizenCon last year. And let's just go back and remember... oh, God, with these ads. Okay, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do. So, underground facilities were... They were here last year. They were all concept art. And let's take some time to remember. People honestly thought that these were going to be like several years out. And I understand where some of that's coming from. Like, I get it. They've taken a long time to deliver a lot of the things that they've talked about. But there's also more nuance to all of this than just the absolute story of everything that's happened in the past, right? Like, a company is made up of different people and different teams. And if you look at the team that's building these underground facilities, where are we? Here we go. Underground facilities being built by the Montreal Sandbox team. What's some of the other stuff they've built? Derelict settlements, Area 18 changes, more derelict settlements, hospitals, Grim Hex Hospital, Lorville Cityscape, Orison Hospital, Space Station hospitals. You know what the thing that is similar between all of those things are? They've all been delivered. The Montreal Sandbox team works freaking fast. They were the first ones that... Actually, we can prove this with video. There we are. Okay. Remember this? January 2022. They showed this concept art. We had the same reaction to this that we had to the underground facilities at CitizenCon. Oh, concept art. We're never going to see these. These are never going to happen. Why are you showing us this? 1 month later. White box. All right, stop loading. Stop loading. You're giving me too many clips now. There's too much tape. I can't keep up. I lost my spot. You jerks. There's too much footage. So that's 1 month later. 2 months later. In engine. 4 months later. In game. This is the way the Montreal team works. And like you can see it in some of their other stuff too. Some of the derelicts that they've been making. Some of the stuff they've been presenting over the last couple of years. These people work. Other teams? Some of the other stuff that we've seen? Yeah, it takes a while. But they've got people on the underground facilities. They've been coming up in the monthly reports. They've been talking about missions that are happening there. They've done gray box walkthroughs. I don't know why I'm not just showing you guys this myself. So like we got the concept art for it. Yes, we got all of this sort of stuff that was just kind of teasers. But pretty quickly, just like with those derelicts, the exact same process, we started to get gray box and white box footage of these things. We started to get some of the more test heavy footage of this stuff. And eventually they were walking around inside it in engine, just like with those derelicts. Now this was, I think, a few months ago. And I don't think we've gotten a significant update on them since this, but this shows the exact same progression path as those derelicts, coming from the same people, and it's a location just like the same kind of thing. I don't think this is going to go much different. I think this is something that's probably due to enter the game within the next year. Likely something they're holding back for Pyro, again, to make a splash with the big update in 4.0. But I believe it is definitely something that will come up at CitizenCon. All right, engineering is another given, in my opinion, just like the UGFs. It's something that we saw. Oh my God. Well, let's just consider how much we've seen engineering. Our first look at engineering was in fall of 2020, when we got a look at very early resource management gameplay, just like a super basic debugging UI, essentially. And that was with Dan Truffin. We got another update about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I think. They told us they had a setback. So this was that first update. Debugged, obviously. It's not made for players at all. And then after that, we got an update showing off the stuff from last year's CitizenCon, which was good. It gave us a bit of a more realistic idea of it, but still wasn't super in-game. And then earlier this year, we got to see a sort of visual concept of it all. While they talked about more of the details and everything involved in it, the different roles that you would have, the different types of ways you would do it, whether you were a tuner who was starting up ships and getting them to run correctly, or an actual mechanic who was fixing stuff on the spot. After that, we got to look into how we can now remove and move components around on ourselves. This was a huge part of Star Citizen's gameplay that took a long time to come about, but it's a big part of engineering. You have to be able to take those components out in order to work on them. So we've been getting regular updates that are kind of pointing towards engineering happening. I think, again, that makes it an obvious choice for CitizenCon this year. So, definite. Claudius. Claudius is a little bit of a random one. But I don't really have too much on Claudius. I only have one piece of footage on it. But it is the engine that drives all audio in Star Citizen. So originally, obviously, they were using whatever came by default with CryEngine, now known as Lumberyard, or rather the other version known as Lumberyard. And they were doing things kind of however that worked. Over time, though, like with many other systems, they have been building an internal tool that works a little bit more better for their specific application in the MMO environment and 64-bit, whatever it is that makes it different. I don't know. And one of those things has been the Claudius tool, which you're seeing here in front of you. They showed it off at CitizenCon, I think 2 years ago. And we recently got a look at it actually in Star Citizen Live, I think, maybe a couple months ago. And I believe during that episode of Star Citizen Live, they also said that they would be showing us an update at CitizenCon. So for me, if I'm remembering correctly, if my memory actually works right, that kind of makes that a guarantee. So maybe we'll see what kind of updates they have in terms of audio effects, the simulation itself, and hopefully more than just new sounds. You know, new sounds are great, but I want to hear more about how sounds will change in real time and the overall design behind sounds. I think we're lacking a lot of ship sounds and feedback, especially from the thrusters. I think guns could sound better. I think there could be more honed in sound effects that reflect the actions we're doing, clicking buttons or, you know, picking things up or moving things around. Like you're missing a lot of tactility in the game because of noise. And I think one of the things I'd love to hear from them in terms of audio is why that is and what they're doing to fix that. Control surfaces. Did a video on this last year. I would check this out on the channel. It is called... Actually, I think it's one of the higher viewed videos. It's called... Resource Management Explained How Star Citizen... No, I'm sorry. Wrong one. Here it is. You might not like upcoming changes to Star Citizen ship flight. Did I tell you guys I got a comment on this channel recently? I titled one of my videos, "You might not like upcoming cargo changes." And somebody came into the post and they were like, "You say most people won't like this, but some of us really like this, and this is what we've been waiting for. Your pessimistic and clickbaity tone isn't great lately." And I'm like, bro, that's not pessimistic, man. Some people might not like this. That's just how it works. That's what Star Citizen is. It's a decisive game. But yeah, there's a video that explains kind of these control surfaces and stuff. And it also goes into some discussion about the heat system and engineering. But control surfaces are an additional add-on to the flight simulation. I don't think I have any video for this. But if you look at... Oh, man. This is like that whole thing where people are like, spaceships don't need to look like planes. They're flying in space. And then you look at Star Citizen ships and it's like, well, these things look like planes. Control surfaces are why. I don't have any video for this at all. But essentially, every ship is going to actually be modeled flying through atmosphere. And whether your ship is shaped like a brick or a wedge, it will fly differently. It will either have to depend more or less on their maneuvering thrusters. If your maneuvering thrusters are undergoing a lot of strain, hence you're flying too low, or flying too slow, your ship is too heavy, you have damaged thrusters, maybe you're missing some of your ship, or you've just been sitting in an awkward spot, like you're hovering in a weird situation, your thrusters are going to start to overheat. Control surfaces are a way of requiring players to think about that. Either you fly fast enough to use aerodynamics to put less strain on your thrusters, or you deal with those thrusters, seeing them lose their structural integrity, work on repairing them, dealing with that wear and tear that they go through in that situation. Control surfaces are essentially a fulcrum in the flight model that's meant to make you choose whether you like to fly in atmosphere or not. It's a way to help specialize further the role of actually being a pilot, especially in larger ships. And it's a way of rewarding pilots who care more. Pilots who have VTOL thrusters like the Terrapin or the Raft, they won't have to worry about control surfaces as much because they can pivot their thrusters to stay in atmosphere a lot easier at slower speeds. So this is like a very significant change that hasn't been talked about a ton yet, but I think it's going to make a lot of people a bit annoyed and also be really exciting for a lot of people. You might just say you might not like the upcoming changes with control surfaces. So pessimistic. Another thing I'm expecting an absolute yes is AI improvements, mainly because these are one of those things that we went over earlier, deeper combat AI, that were shown off at last CitizenCon. We've seen them a ton on different monthly reports, and like you can go in here and they'll probably show something about AI being improved. Dynamic pathfinding is improving. Exiting and entering ships via EVA is improving. Their ability to, let's see, driving vehicles has been improving. Tons of AI improvements have been going on behind the scenes. So I'm assuming we'll see some of that at CitizenCon. Chris Roberts said we will be seeing it, and it's been showing up just about everywhere we look. EVA T2. This is another one that's just kind of low-hanging fruit. We know that this is ready to go because we've seen it already working for Squadron 42. Here it is in action. We've seen both kind of the new animations that they've done. They sort of changed a lot of the prone animations around and used them for more of this kind of zero-G stuff to look a little more fluid. You interact with hard surfaces around you. You actually fly through space using your EVA thrusters. And you can even use your hands for kind of grippy hands maneuvering around the outsides of space stations and spaceships, which you can see happening there. I kind of cut out of it, but it happens right there. And here is what it looks like when you're down on the ground. You can just kind of walk around on your hands and use them to get around, because the EVA thrusters are going to start to be limited. Oxygen is limited. Water and food are limited. Health is limited. Now EVA thrust is going to be limited. So you'll have to either fly around like this uncoupled, or use your hands to get around, or use a multi-tool with a tractor beam to get around. But EVA is going to change. We've already seen it in the engine. They've talked about it plenty. It has shown up on the monthly reports, and it's definitely going to show up at CitizenCon. FPS radar and scanning. This is another thing that was mentioned in the letter as something that might show up. Where was it? FPS scanning. Something that he talked about for coming from Squadron 42 work. And it is another thing that we have seen actually happening in game at this point. So, could be another chance for us to get some low-hanging fruit out of the way. A feature that would be very much appreciated and super helpful for a lot of the stuff that we do in this game. I mean, just as simple as knowing where some loot might be in a room could be helpful. So this will probably come packaged with the new interaction system, which you're also seeing on the screen right now. We saw it at CitizenCon last year. We've seen work on it on the monthly reports, and they have basically been completely shut up about it all year. So I think they've been also saving this for CitizenCon. Rendering advancements we talked about that. That's kind of the stuff that I mentioned. In fact, it was in this letter as well. Gen 12 and Vulcan API stuff is, I think, definitely going to be talked about this year at CitizenCon. They've been talking about it through the course of the year. They've been filling out code, getting it ready for the Vulcan API itself. They've talked about global illumination. They've talked about FSR, DLSS, ray tracing, different rendering for new cloud systems, lighting situations. I think that's also low-hanging fruit and a definite improvement or inclusion for the show. Finally, here at the end of my definites list, we have Melstrom. Somebody was asking about Melstrom. Melstrom is the new damage system that is going to run basically everything in the game. I actually can, instead of me talking about it, how about we have the man himself, John Crew, explain it?
This has been one of those, when we talk about things that hold up this system or that system, the idea of bullets and ballistics and then passing through and damaging the components within a ship has been linked to be the keystone to so many other developments. Anything you can tell us about physicalized damage?
Good news part two.
Oh.
So it is really under heavy active development at the moment. So physics team have done a lot of work in the last 6 months on it. We're now at a point where other feature and gameplay teams have joined them to sort of work out the quirks with it. The vehicle content team have provided assets of ships set up in this new way of doing things. Should caveat this, it's not a vehicle thing, it's an everything thing. Every destructible system in the game will use this. So whilst everyone sort of uses the vehicle example of like, bullets going through ships, it replaces the prop breakable system, it replaces the environment breakable system, it replaces the vehicle damage system. There's another one I forget. So environment teams, prop teams, vehicle teams, we're all working on this at the moment with a bunch of use case scenarios that are with the engineers.
So it's more like an overall destructible physics system.
Yes, yeah. People have probably heard the word Melstrom in various monthly reports.
We had not heard the word Maelstrom prior to this. I think that was a really funny slip up because after this they started putting the word Maelstrom in monthly reports, but not before this.
And pieces.
I'm checking whether that's legit or
It's
not.
not a ship.
I'll wipe the board when we get back.
Right.
So that's the name of that overarching system. It's definitely been said.
In all offense, it's just the name for the system that they already knew was coming.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the internal project name.
But by giving something a name, you give it power.
But it's more than just the physicalized damage for ships. It is a global destructible physics system that we're not going to sit here and commit to it being applied to every single element of Star Citizen.
No.
There's always going to be performance considerations. But you develop the system, and then you start to see where you can plug it in and apply.
You'd find use cases for it. It'd be like a general system.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that's mainly what we know about this system. I do believe it was referenced a couple other times, possibly in video, and it definitely showed up in monthly reports, as I said. But that was like our introduction to that. And as you can tell from what he said about it, it's pretty important. This is something that's going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of our experience across the game when we're shooting other people, our weapons jamming, breaking, getting messed up and not working anymore, our ships disintegrating under us instead of just exploding when they take too much damage, even like your armor or like a barrel, I don't know, boxes carrying stuff, those are going to get damaged as well. So they haven't committed anything to this being in the CitizenCon or anything like that. We know that the only real working application of this is currently on the Claudius. So I think this is something that they're scaling more for Squadron 42. But if we're going to see Squadron 42, I believe we'll see this. And even then, if we don't, this still feels like the kind of thing they'd like to tease, because the damage system is a big upcoming thing and they seem to have it working in like small scales. So yeah, that's Melstrom, the damage system. Now we move on to things that I'm less certain about, but still pretty confident we could see something on. Reputation is a big one, and one I'm really worried about. This is something that definitely should be shown, and it kind of factors into the Pyro faction stuff they talked about. Reputation is like a very important thing to this game. We can buy ships, we can buy currency. Reputation is something that's completely locked out from any sort of real money affecting it. This is where that pay-to-win structure of the game, which is, there's a ton of debate about, but this is where it falls apart, because reputation could be the gate. It could be the way that this progression is gated and the game is paced. It could be the way that both newbies and masters of the game are held to the same standard. Could be the way that they reset everyone's progress. But it hasn't seen a lot of work in a while. They introduced it, I want to say 2021 was when they first brought it in, and they kind of introduced it as this way to, like I said, progress, to make relationships with companies and individuals and work your way up those relationships to get higher pay increases, to get little bits of extra rewards for the stuff you do. And it sounds great. Honestly, the system itself is a good one, but they dropped it. They didn't work on it at all for probably 2 years or so. The team that was building this, I think, had to start working on something else. And since they just didn't have enough employees to get back to this, because Squadron 42, this has sat untouched for quite a while. Until earlier this year when the missions team took over and started to apply new changes to the reputation system regarding, God, what have we seen? We haven't seen them enter the game, but they've talked about changes that will allow hostility to factor in. So if you have a bad reputation with a faction, they'll react to you poorly. If you have a good reputation, they won't attack you. We've also started to hear about how this might affect our services that are available in Pyro. But besides that, not too much else. So I think that there's a lot of room for reputation to grow and change. We've seen that they've been working on new occupations and jobs that factor into reputation. And since this team has finally picked it up after 2 years of nobody being in charge of it, maybe that does mean we've seen a lot more progress on it over this last year that they can show at CitizenCon. But who knows? We'll see. Star map's also a maybe. I know it shows up on this letter, so it's like something that seems very obvious, but it's also something like I feel like they are really trying to hold off for 4.0 because they want it so badly to be one of the major things that sets 4.0 apart from the rest of the game. Like, the star map's one of the worst parts of Star Citizen, period. Full stop. I can show you guys what it looked like before, because it also changed. Oh, I don't even have the footage from before, actually. Here's what the star map kind of looked like. This is the old Moby Glass. And this is what the star map was before. The only things that existed in this game were basically Crusader and all of the things around it. Hurston, R-Corp, these planets out here, you couldn't fly there. As you can see, Microtech isn't even on the map. But like, this was the very basic star map before. It didn't change too much between 2.6 and 3.0, but you can challenge it. Still, it was a little bit different, at least as far as the Moby Glass goes. Before this, we had even a different styled map, and it just generally didn't work all that great. But when 3.0 came in, there was a significant change, and I think they want to do that same thing for 4. I just don't know if they're going to. Data and cargo hauling updates. So, cargo hauling, we talked about this with the freight elevators and the persistent hangars. It's something they wanted to be in the game by now. It's something we've seen in ISC as recently as 2 weeks ago. Definitely something being worked on. I also said earlier that it's not necessarily something I think they would dedicate a whole panel to. So, a full-on update to the cargo hauling profession? Yeah, maybe. Throw that in with, I don't know, a small update to passenger transport? No, I think they'd stick to cargo hauling and just talk about the logistics and everything behind that they're developing. I think I have one other picture that shines a little bit of light onto that, which would be in this folder right here. I'm trying to find a picture that shows off the new way that cargo hauling is going to work. Cargo hauling and trading. Here's one. Here's one of them. Feast your eyes on that for a cool minute. This is kind of showing how cargo hauling will have timers. You'll have labor. You'll have to balance how much cargo and stuff you're actually loading. But this at least shows some of that idea surrounding these big changes that are coming to cargo hauling. And I think we could see an update on this kind of stuff at CitizenCon that goes a little bit deeper into the details of stuff that we've heard about a little bit at ISC. So you can see that we've got, like, you've got your cargo timer for both loading cargo and unloading cargo. It's telling you very intricate and detailed information about what's going on. You can hire workers. These workers might have a discount based on their skills or proficiencies. It's telling you how much you're paying per thing, how much expense you're making. Even here, they've got a faction rebate. So that's the 10% off that you're seeing here. Because you have a better reputation with that faction, maybe you'll get a discount on their services. And then they're showing, you know, like the different types of stuff, where it's coming from, where it's going. Overall, this is like fairly standard stuff, but it does differ a bit from what we're doing with cargo hauling right now. And while this is just a concept, not necessarily what's going to go into the game, I do think this drives their design ideas and is something they could go over at CitizenCon this year. After that, we've got UI updates. The new map is part of that, the new star map, but also the new interior map, which we saw last year. Again, making it, I think, low-lying fruit. They can just give us another update on the stuff they showed us last year, which was a very cool-looking concept for a map. What they basically do is they take all of these very detailed designs they have in the game, because Star Citizen requires them to build everything down to the actual dimensions of the thing. In order to make a map out of that thing, they just take the asset, strip it down into a wireframe, and present it like this in the engine. So the idea then is that as you're scanning or discovering a place, you're just revealing more of this wireframe. I think this is a good thing for them to show at CitizenCon as well. This is something that they showed last year. They've talked about it at monthly reports, and it's crucial for Squadron 42. So they've probably been working on it quite a bit. Again, I don't know if they're going to do anything on this. It seems like it's possible. It would be something that would be nice for them to kind of slip in there somewhere, but I don't know what the full plan is. Besides that, though, UI updates also include the HUD. And they've been doing some work on HUDs that they've been keeping pretty quiet. We know they have diversified HUDs, like the Drake HUDs they've been working on, which I believe they scrapped, but still shows their ideas of making each manufacturer have different HUDs. I don't think we'll see that necessarily during CitizenCon, but I do think we might see the updated Aegis HUD, which I'll get here in a second. That one's probably already prepared for Squadron 42 and running in the Claudius. Now I do have... I do have the old version of what that Claudius HUD would look like. This is, again, an old version. This isn't what it would look like now, but it is the direction they're going in. You can also see another part of the UI update I think we might see is the FPS compass, FPS scanning. You can see those both up here at the top with emissions information at the bottom left and right. You could see the HUD update showing us our objective, our current objective in the mission. I think that's part of the UI update as well. And the mini map in the top left-hand corner also I think is part of the UI update. And then it switches over to the Aegis HUD here, which is, it looks cool, at least for a movie. There's a lot of stuff going on here. And they did say that this specific HUD is something that they went back to the drawing board on. Not the drawing board, but they made some changes to it. All right. Pretty sure this is where they tell us that.
We have, so we can see it one more time here.
So just to call out, that's going to be the old HUD.
Yeah,
That is the old HUD. That's too busy.
that's the next old HUD.
Yeah.
Earlier
Yeah.
we were showing the old HUD.
So we've done a scan here. That's also the...
So that's really all it is. Super quick, but they do say that I'm pretty sure this is the concept we just looked at. Again, this is part of that like kind of consistent messaging that we get at some times. This is the HUD that they were trying to show us. That was their visual goal back in 2020. And here is the HUD that they have delivered and already iterated on in 2022, I guess almost 2023. It's like these designs aren't going away. This is almost a one-to-one translation with a couple different changes here. They're iterating on this stuff and they're building it in the background. The proof is there if you're kind of looking, and it might be slow sometimes, but the UI folks are working on multiple things. All right, so MFD's MobiGlass update. That's another one that's kind of, I won't call that low-hanging fruit because I know they've got a lot more work to do on that. It has so many different apps. In fact, if we look here at the MobiGlass, like the rework itself, it has work scheduled to be finishing up. But if you type in app, PP, if you type in app, you'll see that we've got the bounty hunting app that they're working on, hangar manager app that they're working on, the new mission manager app they're working on, a tracking app. Actually, that might be the bounty hunting app they're working on. Obviously, the new map. They've got a lot of stuff going into the MobiGlass rework, so I'm not sure exactly where that would land or how they'll deliver that, if they're going to wait for every app to be done before we give the new MobiGlass or what. But here is a functional version of what the new MobiGlass should look like based on Squadron 42. This one is made specifically for Squadron. As you can tell, it's pretty similar. It does a better job of presenting info, especially important stuff like objectives and notifications, which we literally can't see right now. Communications app looks a little bit better. The actual mission app does a good job of telling you your objectives, of allowing you to more easily track progress and see your party. And then the most exciting thing at the end is a remote retrieval button for your ship. Don't know if that'll be in Star Citizen. That might be a squadron thing, but it would be nice if you're like 400 meters from your ship and you don't want to hike all the way back. So this is kind of the idea of the new mobiGlas. Again, not something that's guaranteed to show up at CitizenCon, but I think something that's certainly possible. New quantum travel. It's another maybe. This one is a maybe because we know they've been working on it, but we don't really know what it's tied to. The new quantum travel method could be tied to quantum boost, since that's probably going to require a rework to the quantum travel system anyways, and graphics and stuff. Quantum boost is something that we have seen in practice in using old graphics. As you can tell, these are canned animations from the normal quantum traveling method. But this needs to come to game with master modes at some point as well. So I don't really know. I'm not sure if Quantum Boost is going to bring in new effects, if they're going to bring in Quantum Boost and have it use old effects and then upgrade all of it together. So talking about Quantum Boost and regular quantum travel, I don't know what they're going to do, which is why I'm not sure if they're going to show that here today. If quantum travel was its own thing, then I think it would be further away. But I think Quantum Boost is something that we might see in the next year. And ultimately, there is going to be a hefty rework to this. I mean, I'm talking sound effects, visual effects, startup method, the way that we get out of quantum travel, all of it is changing. They have been talking about it on the monthly reports constantly over the last couple of years, and it's a big rework. We've seen it in their trailers. The effects look a little bit different. And they've talked about it too, that like there should be more to the idea of traveling that long of a distance. It should feel more cinematic and more interesting without being overwhelming every time. So again, I don't know what's going to go on with that, but I think new quantum travel effects might be something that we can see. Aaron Halo Belt. We talked about that one a little bit. There's nothing too crazy about this one. We've only gotten one shot of it ever outside of concept art. Let me see if I have any concept art for it. I do not. What I do have is some footage. This is a giant asteroid belt. Most of you guys know it as the place where people go to mine in-game. Clearly, it doesn't look like this in the game just yet, but it's supposed to be a very thick and dense asteroid belt that surrounds the entire star system and separates the planets in terms of travel. It's supposed to be very hard to get through, to the point where ArcCorp, as you can see in the distance here, had to create these artificial gigantic barrier gates that open up a clear path through the asteroid belt and act as a choking point or funneling for all ships going in between the inner and outer system of Stanton. So this is going to be something that complicates cargo hauling, complicates reinforcements, complicates all kinds of stuff regarding actual space travel. It's a big asset. It requires probably a lot of design thought on how this is all going to work in the large scale. But we haven't heard about anything about it. This is from 2020, last time we saw it. I think it's on the back burner. It's not super important to them, but it will mark a pretty big part of the completion of the Stanton system. I don't know if we're actually close to that. I don't really have much context to tell us where we are in terms of the completion of the Stanton system with stuff like this. But I think this is something they could show us if they wanted to tease that out and kind of leave us with the idea that we're moving on from Stanton. But this is less likely, in my opinion, to show up. Fauna. We talked about that briefly. I don't have much reason to think that we'll see fauna. I mean, they've talked about it a little bit. It's certainly been a topic. We have space whales from the past. We have some concept art too. I don't know if I have any of the concept art. We got Boids. There's always that. That's good fun. And then I've got some like concept art for this stuff, but really there's not much to go off of when it comes to fauna. We don't know what they'll be used for other than maybe crafting or selling It seems like they're unique to whatever place they're placed in. So you won't be seeing repeats of fauna a bunch, which means we probably won't see a ton, but they're unique. We've got the Boreal Stalker, which will be on Microtech. Big old Yeti bear looking thing. And we've got the space whales, which I just showed you. We've got the Pyro whip crab, I think it's called, which looks a little bit more creepy and will be native to Pyro. And we've got the, what's it called? I don't remember what it's called. I'm just going to call it the space cow. Tardy grazer or something like that. Something grazer. And I'm actually struggling to find that picture. I give up on the cow. So we've seen some fauna. It's something they could show. I don't think it's super crucial, so I put it in my maybe section, but you never know. The Polaris. I think we're going to see some ships, like somebody said here, Argo MCV, maybe that's a possibility. There are a few different options. The RSI mining ship could be something that we also see. I don't know. But the Polaris and the Raylan are both ships that I think have the possibility of being seen at least. I don't think they're guarantees, but they're both big ships. They can build a lot of hype, and they are kind of impressive concepts I think that would probably drive excitement, hype, and sales. So I could see them showing these ships off at CitizenCon, even though they probably won't be done until late next year at the earliest. Here's the Polaris. Big old missile boat. People love it. Some people live and die by it. And then we have the Gatak Raylan, which is an alien hauling vessel. Looks really cool. It's a interesting concept. When it's landed, it looks kind of like a gorilla almost. In its like hunkered down pose. And when it's flying, it looks like a flying Starmie. For those who are Pokemon fans. It's got very cool designs, especially for the unique cargo pods in the back. Very interesting interior and cockpit. Uses a lot of gravitational equipment and hover stuff, because this is made by the Xion, who, you know, when you can play with gravity, why wouldn't you? As you can see, there's a lot of design thought that's gone into it already. It's got a lot of animations and stuff planned out, but it hasn't quite entered development yet. This is something that'll be followed up on by the team that's currently working on the Santok Yai, which is that ship that I said probably will show up at CitizenCon. For that reason, since the Santok Yai is not finished and development hasn't started on this, I think there is less of a chance they're going to show the Gatak Raylan off than the Polaris. This is a less of a maybe than the Polaris, but something we might still see if they want to build hype over the concept. Next up on my list of maybes is refining gameplay. I actually have a video coming out about this later this week. Refining is sort of the last little bit we need to create a full economic game loop in the industrial sector of gameplay. The only thing we would be missing is crafting. But if we don't think about crafting, which is a very intense gameplay option on its own, then we will have the ability to explore and find, mine and extract, transport, refine, and sell resources, all standalone from any in-game, entity-driven services. All of those things will be able to be player-controlled and completely in the player's possession, which I think is a really significant moment for Star Citizen. Never been the case. Marks, in my opinion, a really big step towards this game actually being a game. Entirely player-driven game loop, all based around a tangible group goal. That being said, we have to wait for refining gameplay for that to be the case. We've seen that refining gameplay is being worked on. We know that refining shows up in the progress tracker, at least refinery ships, as being worked on this year. And they've mentioned it in the monthly reports a couple times. What we don't have is any sort of design or Star Citizen Live, really, to talk about what that process is going to be like. They've talked a little bit about it way back in the past on both the Expanse Q&A and a couple other talks surrounding that the refining process will be shorter than the space station process, more included, that players will be able to do it themselves on both fuel and minerals, all that kind of stuff, but we don't know when it's coming. I think this would be something that'd be great to see at CitizenCon. It'd build a lot of confidence for the gameplay people who are looking for like more to do in the game. And it could also mean a couple more ships coming in. So it's on my maybe list. It's definitely on my I hope list. Building interiors. This is a hype piece, to be honest. I think building interiors would be included in the game or in CitizenCon for no other reason that they are incredibly hyped. Could be the most interesting thing we see, maybe. But it depends on how much they are willing to show us gameplay as well as locations. So for anybody who's wondering, building interiors are meant to be exactly what they say. They're building interiors. These are kind of like dungeons almost. This is what's going to fill out entire cities with content. So when we first started, the idea was that cities were going to be kind of explorable, but it was sort of unclear on how much of the city you'd be able to see. Obviously, they can't make the whole city walkable, but they also have a ton of assets there that could be used for different types of content. So over time, they've talked about it a little bit, but they never really got to building it. And then I think it was a year ago or so, we suddenly started getting missions in Crusader, specifically in the buildings, because they can't do missions outside since there's no ground. That was the first time we got an experience that pointed towards like city-based missions, which I think are a really cool idea. Since then, they've talked a little bit more about the applications that could take and have gone towards actually making cities entirely interactive centers of the game. We're talking about full-on apartment buildings with traversal options. We're talking about cityscapes inside of these buildings, bars and households and luxury apartments that you can rent out, commercial sectors and industrial areas where you can go to do like engineering style missions where you're maybe transferring power or getting something back online or repairing an object. We're talking about central hubs that act as mini landing zones outside of maybe Area 18. So you have like a section that has 5 buildings connected and a bunch of landing pads that don't make up a whole city like New Babbage, but do make up a central area for missions and stuff. And we're talking about underground areas that can maybe facilitate different types of competitions or exploration possibilities. This would be something that might connect to the underground facilities we talked about earlier. And of course, rooftop bars and lounges and stuff that make out those sort of fancier locations we see in some of these cities. So this is like very hyped. This is a super high potential feature that hasn't gone super far yet. So I don't expect to see this like at a really advanced development state by the time we see this at CitizenCon, but I do expect to see it because we know that they've been working on it. They've done some of like the sort of white box and gray box work. We have a couple clips from earlier this year. This is Q1 of 2023. You can see they landed at a building in Microtech. They do the normal thing that we would do, which is, you know, run around the landing pad, go inside to the elevator, but then the elevator actually opens up to a real building interior. Now, obviously, it's not very detailed, super debug ready, and it's made for the folks themselves that are building it, but this kind of shows the direction they're going in one single building in New Babbage, having all this space, you know, multiple levels, hallways, walkways, all this kind of these rooms and views, stuff that basically simulates the ability to go further out into the city than just that central landing zone that we all know. Very, very hyped opportunity, a chance to build dungeons into cities themselves, to build gameplay into planets that don't require players to fly across a star system for things to do. Just, I think it's a really good feature and a cool way to go about it. It's going to take quite a bit of time and probably a lot of effort to create enough assets that allow these to be procedurally generated and still look different. But I think it's a good bet to see at CitizenCon this year. Just because, like I said, it's high hype. They haven't given us an update on it since, I think, February, and they've clearly been working on it. Actor Status T2 looks at a variety of new elements such as hygiene, NPC status tracking, multiple bytes, DNA integrity, medical insurance, cybernetic limbs, and cloning. Hygiene including going to the bathroom and using the shower. So, there you go. Now, for anybody who's hearing that and thinking, oh my god, those are not two separate actions. what I'm thinking is probably going to be the case for hygiene is you have consumables like maybe whatever the future version of wet wipe is, right? You have sinks, you have random places with running water like lakes or rivers or stuff like that. You have showers, you have bathrooms. I think all of the things like that will all factor into the same exact sort of value of dirty or cleanness, and they'll just do it in different levels. A shower obviously cleans you fully. Going to the bathroom cleans you like halfway. Washing your hands maybe cleans you like a fifth of the way, stuff like that. I don't think that you're going to have to keep up with going to the bathroom, and you're going to have to make sure you shower, and you're going to have to make sure you do all of these different things, but we don't know for sure yet. They haven't talked about it. That is actually something that might show up at CitizenCon because it is a very heavy Squadron 42 feature. I'm going to actually, I should put that back down here on the maybe actor status T2. But I think people freak out about this idea of hygiene in this game without realizing that the people who are making this game understand how annoying that can be. All right, what else do we have on the maybe screen? Bounty Hunter V2. We kind of went over that. Let's move on to new caves. Caves are easy, actually, and I think they're not that important. Not important enough to highlight in a keynote or anything, so if these don't show up just because they're showing off like a Planet Tech update maybe, I don't think we'll see new caves, but we have been seeing some new caves added to the game, specifically these new cave locations. This is a new way of them making caves. This is everything they learned from their first iterations of caves, which we all know and love, and they've put them into making new, more interesting, more vertical, more natural-looking caves. And they started with this sandy biome, but they will be expanding this to the rest of the caves they already have, including the current rocky biomes, as well as creating new acidic style caves, ice caves, and I don't remember the third type, but at least acidic and ice style caves will be coming to the game. First, though, they'll have to apply this new way of making caves they've made to the old form of caves, which are these large entry style caves with you can fly into and land a ship and drive into. That's the old style, but they are larger than these new sand ones. Updated character creator, I think that's just, it's kind of due for an update in the next couple of years, and I think this is about the time that they could start to show it off. We haven't had any actual talk about an updated model in Inside Star Citizen or monthly reports or anything like that, so I won't say that that's a for sure thing, but I do think that we're getting close to the time they could do it. Give us some new hair. Squadron 42 is going to be done soon. They probably need to have a finalized character creator for that. I guess I could put Nick's footage on here. I'm not sure if they'd actually show something from Nick's. Again, it's not something that's been talked about at all over the last year. I'm really basing this story off of things that they've shown us or talked about specifically. And pretty sure they've been completely devoid of Nick's conversation ever since a couple years ago. New ammo and damage types is just based on things that we've been seeing in the monthly reports, generally talking about new weapons and damage types and stuff. We also know non-lethal weaponry is coming up. The lightning bolt guns are coming up, or sorry, the Volt weapons are coming up, so those are also going to need some very cool weapons. These are coming up, they're going to be in Squadron, and they use a different type of damage, I believe. So we have a couple signs that we might get some different damage types and things like that, but it's not super, there's no like smoking gun for this kind of stuff. This is just, I'm throwing this one out there in the dark. I wouldn't expect it. Finally, quantum is at the end here. The quantum economy is like, really needs to be introduced, or at least explained in some way, or updated. It's been like a year and a half. We're getting the cargo updates and mining. We're about to get a full industrial game loop. Everything is happening, yet the economy is still super static. So I think this is more a hope than anything. I don't have very many signs that this will actually happen, other than they formed the economy team. The quantum simulation got mentioned, I think, in 3 or 4 monthly reports this year. And everything else is moving along. Those are the only signs I have that this might happen, but This is more a hope than anything. The quantum economy has to show up at CitizenCon. All right, my probably nots for CitizenCon, and again, this list isn't full yet. It's going to keep going over the next weeks, especially when that schedule comes out. I'll probably remove a lot of this stuff and add some other things, but this is the stuff that I'm like pretty confident we're not going to see in any major way in this CitizenCon. Exploration gameplay really refers to deep space probing and understanding signatures. I think we'll see exploration in the sense of maybe new quantum travel, possibly the scanning functionality and that kind of stuff. But when it comes to like recognizing signatures at long distances and scanning things down to find them on the astronomic level, I don't think we're going to see that. Hacking is pretty far along and I think is a maybe, but at the same time, they've just stopped talking about it, which could mean that they've got a surprise for us. But also they just showed us a new mission using hacking gameplay last week, and it did not include the new hacking gameplay we know they've been working on. So that means the content creators, the mission designers, don't have access to hacking gameplay yet, which probably means it's not ready for us. So I think it's less likely to be shown, but they do like to show us stuff that's not ready. So we'll see. Finally, mop and bucket gameplay. Because, you know, mop and bucket gameplay. That is a thing, by the way. It's not just a joke. It's only kind of a joke. I've got my tongue in my cheek, as the kids say. But mop and bucket is something that has taken 92 weeks to work on. Mainly for AI, though. This is like a Squadron 42 feature. This is Bed Sheets 2.0. It's not a big deal. It's just fun to joke about. Anyways, folks, that is, at least right now, without seeing the schedule, that's kind of my sort of expected list of CitizenCon. We'll see how it actually shapes out, though. Probably by the time this gets turned into a video, we'll have the real schedule and we'll be able to laugh at me in hindsight. But for now, that's what I'm thinking.